Sword of Coming Chapter 849. 20,000 words chapter. The update is a bit late. Such an unannounced goose feather snowfall is like an immortal crushing a white jade plate and spilling countless snowflakes. A thick layer of snow soon accumulated on the top of the city, and Chen Pingon, who was squatting, deliberately gathered his fist and sword energy, allowing the snowflakes to fall on the top of his head, shoulders, and blue shirt. The cultivator does not invade the cold and heat. The so-called cold and heat actually not only refers to the circulation of the four seasons, but also the joys and sorrows of the hearts of the people. The site of the Jianqi Great Wall today is like a deserted city outside the Great Wall with no one guarding its borders, a lonely city outside the Guan, suddenly covered with snow, a little bit of blooming, the tracks are as big as coins, the mountains are cold and steep, the birds are hard to find, and the four savages disappear. Vaguely there is the sound of broken jade, and the snow sings together. Lu Qin had already got up and put away the set of wine utensils that he didn't know where the autumn wind came from. Originally, Lu Qin planned to leave and return to the Qingming world. There are so many friends over there, and the master came to Bai Yujing before. Gave him this proud disciple a considerate decree, no longer need to go to heaven to do that useless work, return to the Qingming world, nothing and light, even the most disciplined brother cannot tell him. But it is really rare to come to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Lu Chen was reluctant to leave so quickly. He worked so hard to use the magical powers of a sage with Tianxian. After so hard to attract such a heavy snowfall, he cheeklessly did not move and began to reach out to take it. Shui quickly needed a snowball for him, constantly beating, becoming denser and heavier. Lu Chen gently tossed the snowball, rubbing his chin with one hand. The moon in the sky seems to gather snow, the snow on the earth is like the moon, the lonely light shines on the eyes, the moon and the snow are clear, but there is no one left. Chen Pingon laughed, and the kind that didn't smile was actually better than not laughing. Lu Qin smiled and threw the snowball out of the city head, drawing an arc to fall. Sure enough, we scholars are the most elegant, pure sword repairs like Miss Ning and criminal Haosu are just a little bit off. Chen Pingon asked, Master Lu is not leaving yet. Lu Qin complained, mountains can drive mountains, people don't drive people. When Chen Qing was still here in the early years, Lu Qin actually wanted to come here as a guest. It was just that Lu Qin had to give up this plan with a face-saving senior, otherwise it would be alien's temper. And if you fall near Bai Yujing, you will definitely have to go to the fire. Yu Do is really invincible, and you dare not go to the Great Wall of Jianqi to fight with the old sword fairy, and let Lu Qin get it. As a junior, wouldn't it be too shameful if he met the old sword immortal at first sight and called him a brother? This is similar to Shansha Gate, where the brothers and sisters in the family have never married, so naturally it is not easy for the brother and sister to marry in advance. In fact, Yu Do had walked to the gate of the Great Wall of Jianqi, but in the end he didn't even ask Chen Qing about the sword, leaving only a catch-and-release pavilion where visitors from later generations kept coming. As for the inverted mountain, as the largest mountain in the world created by Yu Do himself, it actually has no far-reaching intentions. It is the second head teacher of Bai Yujing, who is truly invincible, thinking about the future and will ask Chen Qing. There was a fairy at the time of the sword, so there was no need to look at the faces of the sages of the Confucian temple. After winning Chen Qingdu, he directly flew back to Bai Yujing from the wild world with the sword. Of course, until Chen Qing used the sword to pave the way for Feishing City, the second son Yu Do did not make a move. As long as there is a chance to praise Yu Do and Lu Qin, the senior Taoist masters of the brothers, naturally they will never be stingy with good words, and soon publicize a fair and comfortable language, saying that the swordsmanship is invincible. The two peaks stand side by side, each counts as its own, how can it not be really invincible? Who dares to say no? Come to Xuandu to watch, find the poor road to drink, stand on the wine table, dare to talk nonsense, to us Qingming world when fighting and fighting, you are the first to be angry and can't kill you. Chen Pingan suddenly turned his head and said to Ningyao, as long as Zhang Zhang teaches and people speak, they will not deceive, but they can't believe it all. It's the same truth as having no books. Some people talk and like to say only part of the truth deliberately, not the truth, and even make people stay away from the truth. Chen Pingan's words didn't take his heartfelt words into consideration. Ningyao nodded and said, in the small town, I have learned it a long time ago. Lu Qin patted the snow on his shoulders, and said with a face, talking about people face to face is like asking punches and beating the face. It's not in line with the rules of the world. It's not in line with the rules of the world to talk about the nobles. Chen Pingan just watched the vast snow, thoughts and wandering thousands of miles, no longer deliberately restraining his complicated thoughts, trusting the horse by the rein, like a white horse running across the small world. Hauran poets used to have clouds. Snow is something with different roots and shoots, not a rich flower in the world. Many local customs and old sayings that have been passed down from generation to generation in a small town often have a lot of origins, and they are indeed very different from ordinary villages and villages. The rain, snow, and dew that hasn't landed between the heavens and the earth are commonly called rootless water by the old people in the hometown. Nowadays, the world's water transportation is divided into two. Lushwiking Dandan is in charge of land and water transportation, and the new 4 sea kings, including Jigue, are in charge of all other water transportation. Antfong was not the only wind in ancient times, so she did not rank among the 12 gods. Even the Middle-earth Confucian Temple, which has the richest collection of old yellow calendars, and the Summer Palace, which does not need to pay attention to taboos, still does not seem to have a complete catalogue of the 12 high-level gods. It is like the two sides are observing a certain agreement, deliberately concealing it, and not allowing it. People leaf through. If the Jiashan account sword repairing Yusi is the reincarnation of the Rain Master, as the assistant official of one of the 5 highest water gods, but like Antfong, he has never been among the 12 gods, which means that Yusi was born in a barren nature. The reincarnation of the gods of the earth had once shared part of the responsibilities of the gods in the ancient times, and Yusi, the former Rain Master, this time, was a supplementary, and the gods of the water department were the main and respected. Earlier, Lu Qin mentioned the Sissy of the Long Kiln in his hometown. Chen Pingan actually immediately became immersed in his mind. At the same time, he sacrificed a caged bird to protect his Taoist heart, so that Lu Qin, who was standing next to him, could not explore casually. Go to the book building built on the shore of Xinhu Lake to check the entries and search for all clues. Seeing that Chen Pingan continued to be a boring gourd, Lu Qin smiled to himself. Furthermore, I said half of what I said, but Chen Pingan, you are not the same. You deliberately didn't talk to me and chose to continue to pretend to be stupid. But it doesn't matter. Housework, I am a member of the Taoist school, you just believe in Buddhism, and you are not really a monk. Neither of us pays attention to it. Lu Qin then raised his hands, and after taking a breath of mist, he kept rubbing his hands, and said with a hippie smile, the heart is uncontrollable, half of the world. How can you not step on one pair of straw shoes? Chen Pingan just ignored Lu Qin's words and ignored them. It's really this line that seems to be far away in the sky, but it is already close in front of you. Once picked up, it can help you see a complete clue to the ins and outs. It may be a tug of war between Chen Pingan and pure divinity. It's where a certain winner is, too critical. Back then, Chen Pingan carried the ancient sword Long Qi lent to him by the old sword fairy. He left the Jianqi Great Wall and traveled to the lotus flower blessed land of Leiguanzu. After returning from Tonggizhao to Beipingzu, leilunking above the sea of clouds and under Fan Junmeo's protection, Chen Pingan once set out to refine the life thing of the 5 elements water. Fan Junmao, who later became the female mountain monarch of Nanyue Mountain, was the sister of Fan Air. Because she was the reincarnated god, she practiced together, and broke through the realm quickly. When the two met for the first time, they happened to run in opposite directions. They were on the two ferry boats along the long road. Fan Junmao later directly pointed out that she went to Old Man Yang on the trip to the north, which was equivalent to a generous confession of her god. Reincarnation status. When Chen Pingon completed the refining of the water seal, I remember that Fan Junmao, after seeing the weather in his Shui mansion, was able to let the little man in green clothes, who had a pure origin in the water law, willingly obey Chen Pingan's orders. At that time, he was very surprised. He immediately got up, spoke hurriedly, and said something strange that Chen Pingan didn't think much about. Fan Junmao directly asked Chen Pingan if he was the reincarnation of a rain master. Chen Pingan was confused when he heard it. At that time, he also made a joke, saying that Fan Junmao made a fresh and refined flattery. In the end, Fan Junmao seemed to deny the speculation, and said something more sacred, including a sissy, saying that Chen Pingan was far from it. What's more, even though Chen Pingan was too worried, all his thoughts were placed on Lu Tai, who had traveled with him all the way, and he really didn't think about the man in his hometown of Longyao. Even Chen Pingan guessed whether Lu Tai was the rain master. After all, the two parties were the first to take the Osmanthus Island ferry and pass by the Yulongzong with the statue of the rain master. There are indeed many ribbons on Lu Tai's vestments. Sublike. Looking back now, it's just that Zhou blindfold. Deliberately let yourself be dark under the light, don't think about home affairs. Just an account, Tan's natal flying sword is armored cavalry, and Jian's Yusi, who possesses natal flying sword, waterfall, has a secret file in the summer palace, which is actually much better than Zhuzhe, Lubai, and Tan Tan. All, more. These two sword repairmen followed Zhou Mi to the sky, occupying a seat in the old heaven, especially Yusi. They seem to have inherited the divinity that Li Lu was stripped of, making the original gods not in the 12th century. The 4 reigns in the list are high, which is equivalent to several consecutive jumps, directly serving as one of the 5 highest water gods. It's just that Chen Pingan still doesn't know something. Assuming that the man from the long kiln worker in his hometown is indeed a high-ranking rain god, then he is really dead. Old Man Yang used the magical power to cover the sky and the sun, so his divinity disappeared. Returned to heaven and earth, and was held in his hand by Old Man Yang again. Who did he give to? Or the man who had been alive and complained about having cast the wrong fetus all his life, had already made up for the vacancy and walked into the ancestors of soldiers like Fengshua Temple and Jinwu Mountain, and was in the same stable situation as Feng Anti. In fact, before meeting Lu Tai, Chen Pingan's memory of the sissy man had long been blurred. Apart from the deep guilt in his heart, Chen Pingan did not think too much. If it hadn't been for Lu Tai, Chen Pingan might not have said a word, and even on the way of life, he would not have said much on Ning Yao, who has nothing to say. A big man with a soft voice, rough fingers and calluses on his palms, he likes to raise his orchid fingers when he speaks. But this man is very good at needlework. The shabby houses on the Longyao side and the festive paper cuts posted on the windows every year are all made by this man staying up late with the lamp and carefully cut out with scissors. The craftsmanship of the women in his hometown is not comparable to him. Chen Pingan's biggest impression is that a man who is a kiln worker is used to being bullied. He often helps people wash and sew clothes. Wearing a brass thimble on his finger, he bit off the thread under the lamp and shakes it. Good clothes, squinted and smiled. It's not wrong to say that he is like a lady. Chen Pingan can only say that he doesn't like or dislike him. Annoyance would definitely annoy him, but Chen Pingan could bear it. After all, the only thing this man could bully back then was the boy in Mud Bottle Alley who had a more pitiful background than him. Once the man took the lead and said too much. Lu Xianying happened to pass by and slapped the man around. His face was swollen like a steamed bun, and then he kicked him to the ground. If not Chen stopped by Pinyin, Lu Xianying picked up an obsolete sagar on the side of the road in his hand and was about to buckle the man's head. After being blocked by Chen Pingon, Lu Xianying threw a sagar and smashed it on the ground, threatening the man who was beaten, still sitting on the ground, rubbing his stomach and rubbing his cheeks, with a smile on his face. "I caught it, took a knife to make you look like a flower, and helped you die as a maiden's heart." Later, the man really didn't dare to trouble Chen Pingon so much, at most he would say something innocently. Everyone knows that Lu Xianying is Yao Old Man's favorite apprentice. At that time, all the kiln workers knew that Lu Xianying would be the next kiln master of Long Kiln. The key is that this guy is not very old. He is tall and big, and his temper is not good. He doesn't have any seriousness to start. It's just that he gets along with people on weekdays, he is joking, and he is very easy to deal with. Lu Xianying is generous on weekdays and can never keep the money. The master of the flowers, so most people are unwilling to provoke Lu Xianying, who is well known and has a better aptitude to burn porcelain. In fact, the people born in a small town are not only Chen Pingon, who are not living hard, who is qualified to say that they are impatient. Besides, if a person is worried about trivial things, can he have no money in his pocket and no hope for the future? Anyway, on the first day of every month, all kiln workers and apprentices can receive more or less wages from Old Man Yao. At that time, no one will be bothered. Thinking of the 4 streams of rain, it is inevitable to be worried. Thinking of the miserable sissy, a little sad. Just thinking of Lu Xianying, Chen Pingon smiled again. Probably as Lu Qin said, Chen Pingon is really good at demolishing the east wall and repairing the west wall, moving things, and changing locations. It may be because of poverty, not the kind of poverty who can't live a good life, but the kind of poverty who can barely survive, so Chen Pingon liked to carefully subdivide all the objects at hand when he was young, and tidy them up and post them properly. What you get and what you lose are all clear. Probably because of this, in the yellow flower view of the Daquan dynasty, I felt sorry for the obsessive-compulsive disorder of the prince, who had to arrange every book neatly. Chen Pingon has hardly lost anything in his life, so he took the little treasure bottle and traveled for the first time. After losing the hairpin, he didn't even look for it. He just continued to lower his head to build a small green bamboo bookcase, just with Lin. She said something and couldn't find it. Chen Pingon put away his thoughts, folded his hands, and breathed lightly. When things happened in Dali capital, I really had to go to the Yang family pharmacy immediately. Lu Chen stretched his waist and yawned. "Go away, Hao Su, make an appointment, don't die in the wild world, take a leisurely sword out of it, and save enough military exploits. When you get to the Qingming world, remember that you must find poor Dao for a drink. With your swordsmanship and your official position in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, you can be a city lord in Baiyujing." Suspension, a radish has a pit. Recently, that little boy Jiang Yunxing has made up for that fatness in Green City. It doesn't work well, but it can be said that after 100 years of being one of the posters on the 12th floor, poor Dao can really make a little effort. Chen Pingon shook his head and shook off the snow again. He slowly got up, patted his green shirt, and asked with a smile, "Lu Chen, how about we do business?" Lu Chen stopped immediately and agreed without saying anything, "Okay." Chen Pingon turned to look at Ning Yao. She nodded, raised her eyes and looked into the distance, raising her brows, just intent. Chen Pingon looked at the other side of the city and asked with a smile in his heart, "Sect Master Qi?" Qi Tingji nodded and said, "Then try to engrave one more character." "I will do what Senior Zhong Yuan missed back then." Chen Pingon asked again, "Mr. Lu?" Lu Ji had a rare smile and said, "I'm just waiting for your words." The slender, slightly tall and thin woman Dajiangxian has a thicker smile on her face. If we are lucky, we can both return alive. No need to say anything. If we can only come back alive alone, in this city and pour a pot of wine for the other party. Chen Ping'an agreed with a smile. Lu Chen looked leisurely. Chen Ping'an asked Qi Tingji first, or ask Lu Ji first. There is a knowledge of human affection and sophistication hidden here. Lu Ji would definitely agree, but Qi Tingji would not. If you ask Lu Ji first, you won't be authentic. Qi Tingji will not agree, and he will be like a lost sword immortal and suzerain. It was just that Lu Chen had a small accident. Not only did Qi Tingji promise to play the sword, but he also seemed to have the intention. After Qi Tingji left the Great Wall of Jianqi at the beginning, the sky was high and the earth was wide, and there were no constraints. He finally stubbed his mind and gave up the plan of being the #1 person in the colorful world, and stood firm in the Howran world. Today, if he chooses to follow everyone out of the city to hand his sword, life or death is uncertain. No one dared to say that he would be able to leave the wild world alive. As for the Dragon Elephant Sword sect, once the sect master and chief envoy were lost, why would he ride Juechen in the Howran world? Maybe it was a sect of Kendo in that Nanpa Suozhou. Lu Chen asked curiously, Old Sword Immortal Qi, why do you want to do this? It doesn't seem to be in line with your usual style of action. Qi Tingji smiled without giving an answer. In Lu Chen's eyes, he saw the young and handsome old sword fairy standing on the head of the city. He was slender and handsome, dressed in the same color as snow, and wearing a black sheath sword at his waist. The Great Wall of Sword Qi was indeed a handsome man. Probably this is the sword repair of Jianqi Great Wall. If you need to be reasonable in doing things, do what you do with the sword. As for the 2 sword repairmen on the battlefield, Liang is a foreigner, and he is still a foreigner. The hidden official who was about to rush to the battlefield, Chen Ping'an, was also a foreigner. I, Qi Tingji, as the oldest local sword repairman on the Great Wall of Sword Qi, I should treat it as a toast to all the foreign sword repairmen who died here. Chen Ping'an finally asked, what did the criminal officer say? Hao Su folded his arms around his chest and said, it's good in advance. If you have military exploits, you can pick up your head and give it to me so that you can deal with the Confucian Temple. The favor you owe you will be returned to the Qingming world. If you are willing to agree to it, I will follow you through this encounter. The criminal officer should be incompetent. I am still a sword repairman after all. So rest assured, as long as the sword is out, life and death are not considered. Chen Ping'an nodded and said, no problem. Because Lu Ji had no words to say, he roughly guessed the truth about the great sword fairy of Fengshui Temple. He raised his head and glanced at the flying snow in the sky. Wei Jin seemed to think of the winter when he was young in his hometown, the young sword Xiente, Fengshui Pier. Wei Jin stretched out his hand to hold the cross-knee long sword, and said, add me, and make sure not to hold back. Chen Ping'an shook his head, you are not enough for the time being. Although Wei Jin was a sword repairman in the fairyland, this trip to the barren hinterland was not suitable. Chen Ping'an's words at the moment seemed to tell Wei Jin that Chao Jun could not enter the summer palace. It was not bad. Chao Jun couldn't help but fight the injustice for the great sword immortal of Fengshui Temple, and said in his heart, Chen Ping'an is a level lower than you, has the face to say such things. Wei Jin didn't seem to care at all. From holding the sword with one hand to pressing the sword with both hands, it was tantamount to giving up that plan. Chao Jun said with anxious eyes, Wei Jin, what's the matter with you? When you come to Chen Ping'an, you don't have to be hard-hearted in words and actions. Wei Jin answered the wrong question and said, I was wrong before, but you can actually go to the summer palace. Chao Jun's eyes lit up. Wei Jin added, anyway, there is already a Miyu at the bottom. If you go to the Summer Palace, he will definitely follow you. Chao Jun doubted. That me stopped his waist. He was extremely stern in the old dragon city, and his deeds were very impressive. In his early years in the Summer Palace, he was so miserable. Wei Ji nodded and said, "It's worse than you think. In the end, I can only hide in Chun Banzai. The table is by the door, and I will be the door every day." Chao Jun looked at Wei Jin with a smile on his face, and sighed, a little envious of fellow villagers like Wei Jin and Chen Pingan, who became the hometown of the local sword repairmen of the Great Wall of Jinqi. Wei Jin smiled and said, "This Great Wall of Sword Qi is the best river and lake I have ever traveled." Wei Jin paused for a moment, and then said, "The only flaw is that the drinks here are rather boring." Lu Qin supported the lotus crown on his head, restrained his smile, and whispered softly, "You can think about something good before you go. Would you be a little impulsive if you act like this?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Young man, don't be sullen." The old sword immortal Qi Tingji, who only talks about the engraving on the head of the city, was born with a great background, but he has never regarded the Great Wall of Sword Qi as his hometown. There is also the criminal Haosu who rarely shows his face and kills the ascended monks. These few people seem to pay more attention to Qin Pingan's hermit status than the monks in the world. Lu Qin suddenly said, "Right, I'm in a hurry, I just remembered something, Qin Pingan, Miss Ning, and of course the criminal officer, do you know the true identity of great sword immortal Zhang Lu, Dao Zhenfoot?" Haosu shook his head. He knows how he is a criminal officer. He is estimated to be overwhelmed with blood if he signs up for his own number in Feishing City. Chen Pingan and Ning Yao looked at each other and shook their heads. Obviously, Ning Yao did not hear any additional statements about Zhang Lu on the side of all the elders, and Chen Pingan did not find any secret files about Zhang Lu in the Summer Palace. Ning Yao only knows that Zhang Lu is more than 500 years old. He has excellent sword training skills and is a very good friend with his parents. Zhang Lu and Liang are also very close friends, even if they have experienced the 13th battle. Zhang Lu's reputation on the Great Wall of Jinqi is not bad. You can drink and chat with anyone, but Zhang Lu doesn't seem to be particularly close to anyone. Lu Qin rubbed his eyebrows and said with a headache, "Chen Pingan, you never thought, why did the boss sword immortal let Zhang Lu guard the gate at the Fallen Mountain?" The relationship between Zhang Lu and the former hermit Xiao Dang is inconsistent and congenial, isn't it? The eldest sword immortal can't see Zhang Lu's hatred of Haoran's world. Besides, Zhang Dejiangxian's temper, and never hides these things. Even if Zhang Lu rebelled against the Great Wall of Sword Qi, why did Zhang Lu stay there? At the sight of the ruins of inverted Xian Mountain, he did not move his nest for half a step, guarding the gate from beginning to end. Zhang Lu did not leave until the wild demon race exited Haoran like a tide. Chen Pingan wondered, could it be that Zhang Lu didn't just make up for his merits by wearing sins? Are there other secrets? Unexpectedly, Lu Qin shook his head and said, Zhang Lu was just a gatekeeper. It is true to betray the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and to do things honestly is true. Chen Pingan frowned. Before, he only knew that Zhang Lu was a native of exile, Jianqiu. When she was in the middle five, there was a Taoist companion. After she died in the battle, Zhang Lu never married another wife, and even collected disciples. In terms of the matter, he never opened his branches and leaves, but Zhang Lu taught the young swordsman sword skills very casually and did not hide himself, but he did not have any status as a master or apprentice. Zhang Lu's saber is called a mountain rhinoceros, and the scabbard is covered with black scales. It is said that this great sword immortal captured a jade innocent demon clan during his hunting journey in the wild world in his early years. For the scabbard. After that, there were only a few words left in the archives of the Summer Palace. It seems that Zhang Lu had been closer to Jianfang and Yifang in his early years, because he was proficient in the crafting of refining objects, and his identity was a bit like a supervisor. Regarding this matter, after Chen Pingan entered the Summer Palace and looked through the archives, it is not surprising, because before he left the Upside-Down Mountain in his early years, Zhang Lu not only helped Ning Yao send the dragon-cutting platform to Ning Yao, but also the golden robe. Zhang Lu helped to show the blindfold. At that time, Zhang Lu said that he had sought the help of an expert from the Fulu school of the Upside-Down Mountain, and the Taoist intercepted a few beards as a reward. From a memorial to Qing Ci 3 more patterns were peeled off and blended into the cord, so Chen Pingan made it. In the end, Zhang Lu even taught Chen Ping an extra refining formula. Lu Chen helplessly reminded, Zhang Lu admires that Suzy very much. He is also good at refining objects, especially bow making. If I remember correctly, there are still a few hidden in the spring house of Feishing City. A good bow that has been in the dust for a long time, even if the rank is extremely good, can only end up in ash. There is no way, it is pure sword repair, who is still willing to use the bow. Chen Pingan thought for a while. Suzy is heroic, likes to drink, there was Yunzhou, Tianlu also, I have this, is it not heaven? And Shiwozi directly said that the drinker is the Milo of heaven. But these are all traditions. Chen Pingan sighed, raised his hands, and rubbed his cheeks vigorously. It turned out that Zhang Lu, like the old deaf child guarding the prison, was not a human monk, but from a monster race. It's just that Zhang Lu's identity is a bit similar to Bai Zhe, and he is accepted by Haoran. Because this, Tianlu, is not only the name of the wine, but also a kind of beast recorded in the Shanheishu. Since ancient times, the dignitaries of the world have liked to place the statue of Tianlu in front of the tomb. The ancestors' shrine and tomb, the purpose of making the Ming dynasty peaceful. If it is Zhang Lu's choice to betray the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and the boss Jianxian is willing to respect his choice, then the only thing Zhang Lu has to do is to promise Qin Qingdu to continue to keep the gate, like a guard. The head of the grave is general, and the final care is taken for the Jianqi Great Wall ruins like a tomb. Zhang Lu kept his promise as well. That would be pure sword repair of the Great Wall of Jianqi. It's no wonder that the two worlds were already in different camps, and Liang was still willing to face Zhang Lu with a smile, and was still a good friend. Chen Pingan took a deep breath. Regardless of this, the two sides really want to meet again on the battlefield this time, and each of them puts their swords into the best of respect. Chen Pingan asked, Master Lu, how can I temporarily borrow Taoism? Lu Qin smiled and took off the lotus crown on his head, casually tossed it to Chen Pingan, the Taoist tokens of the third master of Baiyujing, and gave it away. Chen Pingan took it with one hand. Ning Yao began to help Chen Pingan untie the updo. Chen Pingan took off the white jade hairpin and put it on his head without hesitation. Lu Qin smiled hippily and said, Take it and wear it, and I will stay in it afterwards. You said it's a coincidence, we both happen to be the scene of Yinshan traveling far away, but we said in advance that we have 14 realms of Taoism. Whether it's bad or bad, you have to bear the consequences. Forget it, you know this truth better than anyone else. Chen Pingan smiled and said, It's also a coincidence. Before the junior asked Jianbei Zhu Luzhou Suyunzong, he wore a similar style Taoist crown with a pseudonym, and the Taoist name was Invincible. Lu Qin looked from the left to the right, good boy, wearing a Taoist crown, a blue shirt and a sword on his back. The Yushu is getting closer to the wind, and he muttered, Fate, fate. Chen Pingan helped the Taoist crown, turned his head and smiled, Mr. Lu, it's better to borrow a few good swords and fight side by side with Master Lu. No matter how polite you are, it will be hypocritical. The big deal can be converted into immortal money, even if it is not returned, Master Lu will definitely come to ask for it. Lu Ji was accustomed to using the standard long sword cast by Jianfang. But this time, to be careful, it's safer to borrow a few good swords from Lu Qin. Lu Qin was dumbfounded. Huh? Pang Dao thinks he can be considered a shameless person. Chen Ping'an, you can even better. On the side of the city next door, Lu Ji has stretched out his hand. Well, you are welcome to come to ask for debts after Master Lu is welcome. The Dragon Elephant Sword sect is at the seaside of Nanpa Suo Island. It is easy to find. Lu Qin said again. Although the hometown of the poor is awe-inspiring in the world, it is not possible to come if you want. The rules of the Saint of Rituals are left there. You two are determined to be a pitfall and a misunderstanding, right? Lu Qin sighed, and had to raise a sleeve and fumbled through it with one hand, as if digging through the treasure house. Chen Ping'an reminded, Master Lu, anyway, he is going to give it away, so he can just grit his teeth and be more generous, otherwise he will look down on Master He. Lu Qin checked the many treasures in the universe in his sleeves and said, borrow, not send. Finally, Lu Qin took out a sword box the size of a palm, and one jumped in place, leaped high, and threw it to Lu Ji from a distance, shouting, Mr. Lu, save some use. It will make you bypass a lot of bumps unintentionally. It's just this kind of thing that we can't prove in ourselves. You should be the experience of someone who has passed by. Talk. Confucianism speaks of being cautious, while Buddhism speaks of self-certification, but they all mean the same thing. It's just that it doesn't make sense to tell a teenager this. I have to admit that a lot of truths actually have thresholds. In addition, we must also pay attention to whether they are willing to learn and willing to listen. Chen Ping'an stopped at the alley and smiled with the young man. Your Aunt Zhou is a good talker, please beg her more, and then be clever and find something to do on weekdays, such as taking the initiative to buy wine for Aunt Zhou. It's certainly not difficult to learn some physical fitness skills. Wan Yen nodded, understood, you still have to spend money. Chen Ping'an laughed, walked out of the alley, and left straight away. Zhou Haijing curled his lips. Wan Yen stopped for a long time, and when he could no longer see the blue shirt, he ran back to his good friends Gao Yu and Zhou Haijing. Zhou Haijing said, I advise you to give up on the matter of learning boxing. The reason is that you two are not black enough. Gao Yu was puzzled and asked, isn't it enough? Zhou Haijing rolled his eyes, turned and walked into the house, closing the courtyard door. Glancing at the white bowl on the table, she only hoped that this bookish sword immortal, Pei Qian's master, would really do what he said and stop pestering herself. Zhou Haijing sat on the threshold of the main house, looking at the courtyard door outside. The fishermen by the sea, exposed to the sun all year round, the sea breeze, and the young girls fishing for pearls, most of them have dark skin like charcoal, and they can see where they are going. There used to be a man from a village who stopped and settled in a seaside village to help fishermen dry sea salt and build dams. And her hometown, near the sea, has been passed down from generation to generation by her ancestors, saying that it is the place where the sun rests with eyes closed and wakes up with eyes open. Back then, the poor girl was like a flower mirror. Chen Ping'an gradually walked away, muttering to himself, at the same time the flowers and fruits. In the front yard of the Yang family pharmacy, Su Dian and Shi Lingshan continued to look after the shop. There was no business anyway. Su Dian left the front yard and went to sit in the backyard. Even if the master was not there, she was still behaving. She did not dare to sit on the steps of the main house or sit on the bench. Shi Lingshan raised the curtains, looked at the senior sister, and sighed. She was very sad, Xing Dafeng, the bastard. I heard this old bachelor's bad idea a few years ago. When I met Yu Lu at a battlefield site in the old Zhuiying dynasty, I said that I was not actually Sudian's junior, it was his son. It is not something worth talking about. I often put it on my lips, begging for a pitiful, not a hero. My master doesn't care much about my past. He doesn't say anything when he sees me, he never asks. He only recognizes one thing and takes me home. I have to be responsible to me. In fact, it's okay. After going up the mountain, the master often travels far away, and when he comes home, he doesn't care much about me. The more you do this, the more sensible I will be. What do you think is the largest mountain and water in the world? What do you want to do with this thing? There is a hammer to use it. Fellow Taoist, you tell me. Howren Jojo, is it like 9 mountains emerging from the water, or just a mountain, just surrounded by the 4 seas? Chen Lingjun nodded when he heard the words, and he was really so interesting, and laughed. The saying of fellow Taoists is also quite knowledgeable. Chen Lingjun stood on tiptoe and secretly patted a horn of ox. My house has a hill, all seasons are like spring, and there are strange flowers and weeds all over the hills and plains. There are so many sweet green grasses. Qing Nyok shook his head slightly, as if looking at the boy in Qingyi. Chen Lingjun nodded, and said with satisfaction, as soon as I hear about eating, my comprehension comes. That's a good thing. I might really practice the magic of the immortal family in the future. The boy Daotong smiled and didn't say anything. He just patted the green cow's back and signaled to take his temper. This time he traveled to this small town, he traced back to the source, to see what is one. The monk who went to a dragon kiln from the river wanted to know how the one became one. As for the old master outside the school, he wants to know where he is going. What a young boy, Tianjun, who has been in prison for more than 10,000 years, he did not hesitate to use the of fire Wanxiu and the of water Li Lu as concealment methods that can be discarded. In the end, he step by step, interlocking and concealing the sky, dare to really let him have no roots and a face. The new and old co-lord of the heavens will become the one and will soon reappear in the world. Chen Pingan in Ni Ping Lane, the young man who grew up eating by Jia Fan, if there is no accident after that, he will eventually become the one with the best chance. This is not the case at the beginning. Old man Yang quietly broke up that one with his own hands, and then let everyone in the town Jiazi fight for that one. Everyone is qualified to fight for this one, even if it is the reincarnation of gods like Wanxiu and Li Lu, there is the same opportunity. Everyone has a chance, everyone has a share. Wanxiu, Li Lu, Li Shixing, Li Baoping, Kiln Worker Sissy Man, Xinghua Lane, Makushuan, Nipping Lane, Song Jisin, Zhenlong Jigue, Li Huai, Lu Xianying, Gu Kan, Xiao Yu, Lin Shouwan. Sudian, Xiao Ling. Everyone was silent, unknowingly being in this game. In addition, the Lizhu cave sky is inherently intricate and complex. Because of this, the secret is not visible and there is no trace. What's more, there is Qi Jingchen before, and Cui Yang behind. Chen Lingjun looked at the young Taoist boy and asked, "What's the matter? Are you distracted? I'm still embarrassed to let me lead the way, so be polite, say, where to go." Dao ancestor smiled and said, "The master of your family is very powerful. I want to see him if I have a chance." Chen Lingjun patted the young Taoist boy on the shoulder, then smiled triumphantly, and said with a smile on his hips, "Taoists are talking nonsense." An old master smiled and came to the boy in Xingyi, patted Chen Lingjun's head, and said with a smile, "Talk to Dao ancestor, don't be big or small." Chen Lingjun patted the old master's hand with one hand. "After thinking about it, forget it. They are all scholars and don't care about you." They just smiled and looked at the young Taoist boy. "You are really fellow Taoist, and the name is too big, are all homophonic with Taozu, change it, there is a chance to change it." The young Dao Tong smiled and said, "Tao ancestor is not a name, it is just a Dao number given by others, I don't think it needs to be changed." The middle-aged monk followed in the street. Chen Lingjun choked for a while, glanced at the monk in the distance, then raised his head to look at the old master with a kindly smile on his side, finally looked at the young Taoist boy. Chen Lingjun took a deep breath, thumped and knelt on the ground, his hands clasped together. Lifting up high and keeping silent, it's really not that he doesn't speak etiquette, but these three, which one is correct first? It seems to be wrong to call someone first. No matter what, if you knock 9 heads for respect, you should give 3 knocks for each person. Anyway, the patriarch of the 3 teachings, you don't have to worry about this little thing. After holding his hands, the old master said, if you want me to see, the matter is over. Besides, for the time being, there is actually no fixed number. Leave it to the world. Dao Zhu smiled. The holy master also laughed. Chen Lingjun finished gnawing his head, quietly raised his head, and found that something seemed to be amiss. He didn't care about it, and he knocked 9 more, no, 18 beeps. The middle-aged monk looked at the plaque in Buddhist language on the archway building, and didn't ask outside. He looked at the gods and God's grave, his hands clasped together, and the Buddha sang endlessly. Daozu glanced at a room in the backyard of the Yang family pharmacy. There was a letter for Chen Ping'an. There was a sentence on the letter. Have you ever eaten enough? The old master sighed, Qi Jingchen. Sword of Coming Chapter 850. Listening to the innermost words of the Tsing-Yi boy, the middle-aged monk first said, let's look again. The old master smiled and said, I think this is very good. After waiting for more than 10,000 years, why rush for a while? Dao ancestor nodded and smiled at the green cow. Since there is nothing wrong for the time being, you just go shopping and remember not to cross the border. There is also a big belly. Don't hold grudges about things today. Be too careful. It is a good thing to practice cultivation. Not so. Qing Niu lost that great avenue suppression, and suddenly appeared in human form. He was a tall and old Taoist, with a clear appearance, awe-inspiring attitude, and extremely majestic. It is the old master of the Taoist temple in the East China Sea, the well-deserved of the lotus root's blessed land, because the lotus root's blessed land is connected with the lotus cave sky. From time to time, he breaks off his wrists with the Taoist ancestors to compare the level of Taoism. Lao Guanzhu is also the master behind the 4 people who created Zhu Lian and Sui right side of the inner picture scroll, and he is recognized as one of the most powerful 14-realm monks in the world. The oldest existence between heaven and earth is in the same generation as Tuoshan ancestor, Bai Zhe, and the first rise. Regardless of age, only the Daoling of the years of practice, Lu Shilu of the Wenqing lineage, and Zhang Lu, who has a hidden identity in the Great Wall of Jinqi, are all considered juniors. Every time the old Guanzhu goes out to travel, he is like a fairy poem. What's more, in the ancient times, the Bixiao cave next to Luobao Beach was invincible from the cave, able to forgive and not forgive. It didn't become a mount until it met a young human monk, and later, there was the saying of smelly bull nose in the world. Chen Lingjun raised his head slightly and glanced from the corner of his eye. Compared to the old brother Jia in Qilong Lane, he was indeed a little bit more immortal. If the old Taoist had such an appearance from the beginning, it is estimated that the Taoist ancestor of riding a bull would only be mistaken by Chen Lingjun for the fire-burning boy next to this old god, who would do some chores like looking after the Dan furnace and shaking the fan. Old Guanzhu glanced at the Tsing-Yi boy who was still sitting on the ground, a brave little reptile. Chen Lingjun immediately lowered his head, moved his butt, and turned his head to look away. I can't see you, you can't see me. Lao Guanzhu smiled and said, Friend Jingqing, the face that your master lost in Uwafuti has been picked up by you. Chen Lingjun didn't lift his head, bowed his head, and said dully, It's not guilty if you don't know. If the old and I care about this little thing, it won't be so fairy tale. By the way, it'll give you a reminder, the only way to crack it is not to write words, only to understand it. Chen Lingjun thought in her heart, just about to say something. For example, when he thought of how to brag with Brother Jia, he started to feel dizzy. After several attempts, Chen Lingjun shook his head and didn't think about it. Wu Yisher said, "My place of cultivation is Huang Tingui Yu Jiang." The old master said, "Huang Ting Jing, that is a Taoist sutra. I heard that by reciting this sutra, people who can refine the mind and gain the Tao, over time, all the gods are with them. There are many techniques, and when you look at it carefully, they are actually all similar paths, such as the way of thinking for a cultivator, is to plant rice in the heart, to train the spirit of the morale, to cultivate, and every time you break, it is a spring planting and autumn harvest in a year. The 10 realms of pure martial arts on the first level, the beauty of aura is just about the same number of ways. It swallows the mountains and rivers, turns it into one's own use, sees it as believable, then returns to the void, gathers together, and becomes one's own territory. So Taoism respects the emptiness of oneself, Confucianism says that a gentleman is not a weapon, and Buddhism says that it is empty, and that all aspects are incompatible. Listening to these brain-painful words, the forehead of the boy in Tsing Yi became a lock of hair because of sweat. It was very funny, and the more I thought about it, the more I became afraid. Chen Lingjun spread out his hands, sweaty, and wrinkled pitifully. "Holy Master, I'm very nervous at the moment. You can't remember what the old man said, can you wait for my master to come home and tell him go? My master has a good memory, likes to learn things, and learns everything fast. Tell him, he must know everything, and he can draw inferences from other things." The old master was noncommittal, smiled, and changed the subject. "Your master's gentleman, that is, the old scholar of Wenxing, has he ever said something about the word royal?" Chen Lingjun looked dull and blank. "Master Wenxing is my master's husband, and not my master Jinking's husband. The most sacred teacher, you are a bit unprepared in the school examinations like this, you really don't conform to the rules of the world. Forget it, the most sacred master is not a mess. Alas, if Mr. is here, no matter what the most holy master says, he can take it. Is it possible that I will read more books in the future? There are a lot of books on the mountain, the old cook, hee. Hey, the most sacred master was standing beside him, looking for death. Chen Lingjun slapped himself directly, his mother's shot became heavy, and his face was stern. The old master smiled and said, "You don't need to be so restrained." The old master smiled and said, "This is indeed a very beautiful thing, and it is worthy of our hope." Chen Lingjun grinned and lay on the wall, finally able to do something for his master. The old master seemed to be in a good mood right now, patted the boy in Tsing Yi on the shoulder, smiled, "Go." Chen Lingjun let go, and when he landed, he wondered, "Sage master, where are we going next?" "Go to Wenwu Temple." The old master smiled and said, "I have slapped Daozu on the shoulder, and that one is not bad anymore. In the future, when talking about heroes at the wine table, where is your opponent?" Chen Lingjun was sweating and waved his hands vigorously without saying a word. "Most holy master, are you cheating me?" The old master reached out his hand and grabbed the Tsing Yi boy by the arm. "What are you afraid of, isn't it?" Chen Lingjun stood on his feet, leaned back, and almost shed tears on the spot, and howled, "I'm not going, I'm really not going. My master believes in Buddhism, and I also followed, the kind of sincere, we fell in love. Shan Feng, the #1 purpose, is to treat people with sincerity. If the master finds out in the future, Chen Lingjun can't beat him." On the side of Luopa Mountain, there was a table at the entrance of the mountain. On the other side, there was a little girl in black, carrying a golden pole on her shoulders, a green bamboo stick across her knees, and a small cotton satchel slung, sitting on a small bamboo chair. She saw an old Taoist standing over the table, rubbing her eyes, not her dizziness. The little girl leaned the hiking stick and golden pole against the bamboo chair, immediately stood up, and ran to the tall old Taoist. He stood still, raised his head and asked, "Old Taoist, are you thirsty? We have tea here for customers." The little girl added, "No money." Seeing that the old Taoist said nothing, Xiaomili said again, the tea is not well known. The tea comes from our own old tea tree on the mountain. The old chef personally fried it. It is this year's new tea." Lao Guan nodded and sat on the bench. Compared to the small town, he was relieved. Otherwise, Chen Pingan had to settle this account, and it would lose his identity to shoot the little reptile. Those with thin ground will not produce big things, and those with shallow water will not swim. Before the millet is used to boil the water, first open the cotton bag and take out a large handful of melon seeds on the table. In fact, there are melon seeds in the 2 sleeves. The little girl is showing off to outsiders. Xiaomili asked, "Old Taoist, is it enough? If it is not enough, I still have it." The old Guanju thought of the Jingqing Daoist friend again. The words were almost the same, but they were so different. The old Guanju rarely had a smiling face and said, "Enough." The little girl in black asked the old man to wait for a while, and she went busy on her own. Sort of Coming Chapter 851. How dare Chen Lingjun pat that person on the shoulder? He was still alive and dead, but the old master had no choice but to give up and let Chen Lingjun take himself out of the town, neither to the gods' graves nor to the Wenwu temple, but just a detour. The Longshu River, go to the stone arch bridge and finally take a look at the ruins of the small temple similar to the pavilion. Chen Lingjun tentatively asked, "The most sacred master, who was the tall Taoist old before, has his realm very high?" The old master nodded, "It is very high. If the realm is not high, the Taoist ancestor will not teach him the Taoism. Moreover, this Taoist friend, in his early years, was a great beneficiary to our human race, so the ritual sage was set in line with the earthly branch. In the 12 zodiac signs, the ranking is very high. It is the bull temper of fellow Taoist. Forget it, it's not kind to say right and wrong behind." Chen Lingjun was anxious, but listening, "It seems to be a bit of a holiday with my master. What to do? I must not be able to beat the old Taoist, and the holy master said that he would be guilty in fighting with Taoist ancestors, so no matter how you look at it, I don't take advantage of it." Nonsense, of course, he and the most sacred master are in the same camp, and you can't turn your elbows outside. What is called Hunjiangu means that 2 groups of people are fighting and fighting in groups. Even if the number of people is huge and there are few people on their own side, they are destined to be unable to fight. Earlier, the old Taoist mentioned the lotus root flower blessed land. Listen to the tone, his master has suffered and lost face there. Regarding the blessed land that was renamed the lotus root blessed land, Chen Lingjun only knew that Pei Qian and Chao Qingyang, as well as the old cooks and cultivators, all came from this wonderful geomantic land, but they didn't like to talk more about their hometown. Chen Lingjun was too lazy to ask about the matter, so he always mistakenly thought that it was an inferior lotus flower blessed land in the past, and there were not even a few cultivators, and there was no land immortal. What storms could be caused? How could I think of running out of a guy called Daoist friend by the ancestors? It's really not good to look at him. It's because I was kind to others, and talked about a lot of grass in the mountains in my own family. Otherwise, this foolish account, my little arm the calf cannot be carried down. The old master shook his head. In fact, in the lotus roots, this Taoist friend recognized your master's life in the world, especially the long way in the heart, and it was just right to relieve people. Chen Lingjun was relieved, straightened his chest, and laughed. My elder, the elders have always had a good relationship with them. But the master also said that, he later speculated that it might be the intention of the national teacher. The old master nodded. Chen Pingan's guess was the truth, and it was indeed the work of Cui Yang. Of course it's not a good idea to say Lopeo, but if you can get a certain word, the meaning will be completely different. The reason why Cui Yang stripped out a heart-pounding Cui Dongshan, in addition to those big plans that have already come to light, actually hides a more interesting means, that is, to use another self, perhaps to use one or two key words. Opening a certain kind of restriction is like a letter from home, sent to yourself in the years to come, to help remind yourself at what stage, time, point, and what to say and do. Just like Daozu walked out of the Lotus Cave sky this time, left the Qingming world, he talked to himself early. Daozu has different questions and answers with some destined generations who have seen the future but have not yet come to him. The avenue evolves within the cave, carefully deduced, and it is already good. Howren embroidered the tiger. This time I asked the ancestor of the three teachers to take a seat, one asked, and the three left. Of course it does not mean that Cui Yang's mind, Taoism, and knowledge are higher than those of the Sanjiao patriarch. It's like the patriarch of the three sects has thousands of choices. Cui Yang said that the path he helped choose is the one that he can prove to be the most beneficial to the world. This is the undoubted case, then three of you, to go or not to go. When he reached the stone arch bridge with no hanging swords, the old master stopped and looked down at the river, and then raised his head slightly. On the far side of the blue cliff beside the river, where the straw-shoe boy and the ponytail girl first met, one entered the water fish, a watchman catches fish. How many small fish swim freely in the blue water, a fight for the change of fish and dragon, the world will see the eternal dragon gate again, and the purple, gold and white scales are leaping. Chen Lingjun sat on the side of the bridge, with his feet hanging in the air, arms around his chest, and raised his head and asked, "The most holy master, your old man used to be on the side of Mud Bottle Alley. What did you look into the house?" After holding his hands in his hands, the old master smiled and said, "In order to survive, a poor, hungry child, dried the fish and ate all of it, without any leftovers, and ate it cleanly and quietly. A helpless child in Ni Ping Alley first learned how to cook medicine from a fellow at the drugstore, and then learned how to go up and down the water from Lu Xianyang, and then learned the craftsmanship of porcelain from the old man Yao in Long Yao, and practiced fist recognition from the fist book." The old master smiled and nodded, which was also very comforting. The heaven and the earth, the rebellious journey of all things, the time and the passerby of 100 generations, I am also a pedestrian on the road. Sad and bitter. Oddly fortunate. I went to June's house unknowingly while crossing the water to see the flowers. The old master expressed his gratitude to the whole world and also said goodbye. The monk walks in the wind, gallops to the sun and the moon, and is kind. People in the world, because they are not free, are pursuing freedom, hoping that next time the vicissitudes of life will turn into a blessing, everyone will have plenty of food and clothing, and they will be full of books. Finally, the most sage master glanced at the back alley of the town. The small alley is called Mud Bottle Alley. The sky is healthy, and the gentleman strives for self-improvement. A flower grows out of the silt and makes a bottle with your own heart. Isn't it beautiful when the flower opens? I believe that the other two who traveled in the small town also viewed that one in this way. Lao Guanzhu glanced at the side of the mountain road, like a white cloud falling from the green hills. In addition, there is a female martial artist walking down the mountain. The young man in white is walking around in circles around the woman, screaming, bouncing, and playing clumsy punches. The woman is accustomed to it. She turned a blind eye to his troubles, went down the mountain and walked and fisted. The old master was too lazy to look at that Cui Dongshan again. He stretched out his hand and grabbed it. There were two more things in his hand, a token rune sword cast by Longquan Sword Sect, and a safe and sound card issued by the Ministry of Penalty. rustic. As for where the two things came from, God knows. The master of Old View held the fujian with his and squinted his eyes for a closer look. As expected, there is an ancient sword technique that is not easily detectable. A trainer with insufficient realm is destined to fail to see through it. As for what is meant by inadequate realm, of course it is not enough under the 14th realm of Qi training and Ascension realm sword repair. It's just that the sword art is incomplete. I want to make it up. About MO5 or 6 rune swords are needed. However, no matter what the price of the rune sword is, as long as someone is willing to do this, it is a very profitable business. How can you make a profit? This sword tactic alone is enough to make a kendo sect stand a firm foothold in the vast world. The key is that the threshold of this tactic is low. As long as you are a sword cultivator, you can practice sword practice step by step without having a good qualification. Strength, the rank of sword arts is not high, but it is safe to practice. Therefore, the larger the sect, the more important this kind of Taoism is. Lu Chen always does whatever he wants. He likes to put long lines to catch big fish, but it doesn't matter if he can't catch them. Whether it's Shi Ro in Riding Dragon Alley or Jean Li, a rope with 7 turns and twists, it's like a bait who only asks for a wish, and doesn't care about the broken fishing line or the swimming fish that eat bait. Qin Yuanji had just stopped at the gate of the mountain. She knew how serious it was. An old Taoist priest who could make Mr. Zhu and Cui Dongshan take the initiative to go down the mountain to meet is not easy. For some reason, the old Taoist looked as usual, but Qin Yuanji felt extremely stressed, holding his fist and saying, in reply to the Taoist, the junior's name is indeed Qin Yuanji. Zhu Lian smiled and said, what to scare a little girl into? Cui Dongshan beckoned, Millet, let's knock some melon seeds. The little girl in black immediately got up from the bamboo chair, trotted to the table, and took out all the remaining melon seeds from the cotton bag, but not many. Here, brother. Cui Dongshan slapped his head and asked, right guard, just like that. Hearing the name of the big white goose, Xiaomi Li kept his face straight, and took out a large amount from his sleeve. Cui Dongshan nodded, the right guard is generous. Lao Guanzhu asked Zhu Lian again, how about the sword technique? Are you planning to choose from the sword fairy embryos of the Great Wall of Sword Qi? The same old master, the Daoist master son of Dashuan Duguan, urged Lu Qin to go and turn to reincarnation as a sword repairman. This is not all a joke, but a targeted one. Of course, just because of Sun Weishong's temper, Lu Chen really wants to be a sword repairman. It is estimated that no matter what, Lu Chen will be turned into a little Taoist boy with the lowest level of Xian Du, and he will call his ancestor a few times a day, otherwise he will hang on the peach tree. Hit. Zhu Lian smiled and said, I don't have the face to teach others swordsmanship, it's not a misunderstanding. Haoran Jian Xiao, and throwing one to the blessed lotus root, is a well-deserved sword fairy. In the history of Owafuti, there are also some deeds of land immortals recorded in the history of barnyard officials, but there is no evidence to find out. Zhu Lian has also started to compile official history books in addition to calculating accounts and construction, and has seen many unfamiliar history of barnyard officials. What kind of immortal Anilk spit out sword pills, white light flashed, and thousands of miles took the first level. However, even in the hometown, even these rumors of ghosts, mentioning the sword immortal line, there is nothing good to say. What is not the avenue of longevity, but the side magic, the flying sword technique is difficult to achieve the avenue. But Zhu Lian's road to martial arts, in the final analysis, really came from books. This is exactly the same as Jia Xing, a scholar in the world. They are all self-taught without a teacher. They only rely on reading to learn and become talented, but one is practice. One is martial arts. When Zhu Lian first walked the rivers and lakes, he also traveled far with a sword, traveled all over the famous mountains and rivers, and visited immortals. Another, with hidden thoughts, Zhu Lian wanted to know the boundary of the world. If it is really a round sky, no matter how vast the world is, there will be an end, right? The millet grain did not go far, his face was shocked, and he turned his head and asked, "Does the old cook still play a sword?" Zhu Lian waved his hand. "What kind of swordsmanship? Don't listen to the polite words of such guests, it is far behind Pei Qian's crazy swordsmanship." Cui Dongshan lowered his head and licked melon seeds, Xiaomi grains. "Don't you know, this old cook took off his apron in the stove, went out, and played with swords. He was very famous in the lotus roots. Very, it is said that on the long sword of the noble son Zhu Lian, what is entwined is the charming sentiment of the woman, which is incomparable to you me. I don't know how many women from the rivers and lakes have turned to practice swords infatuated for a lifetime, just to be able to compare with the old chef field. Cui Yang once followed the old talents and traveled to the lotus roots, and knew a lot about the local customs there." Millet hurriedly covered his stomach with one hand, pressed his mouth vigorously, and said vaguely, "The old cook was once a noble son." Zhu Lian smiled and said, "The hero doesn't mention the bravery back then, it's all things of the past. The world affairs are all based on false accusations." Millet nodded heavily, turned around and ran back to the bamboo chair, grinning, just taking care of the old cook's face, without a laugh. The left guardian in Qilong Alley just slipped to the gate of the mountain and looked up at the old Taoist from a distance. It immediately turned around and ran away. Old Guanzhou glanced, but unfortunately, for some reason, Wanxiu changed his mind, otherwise he would have almost complied with the old saying, "Toad swallows the moon, Tengu eats the moon." Sui right side came from the hilltop Yujian from another place. She did not take a seat. She wanted to ask the of the lotus root to ask about her husband. Old Guanzhou said to her, "Tell Chen Pingan, the survival of Tongyi's Hao Jindingwen doesn't matter, but Xiao Yuanran must be kept. As for that Ni Yuanran, you only need to talk to him and give out that one. Jin Dan, he is free now." The legal system of Jindingwen originates from the Loguan school of Taoism, which is a line of Taoism that keep the grass as a building, watch the stars and look at the spirit. As for Ni Yuanzhan who supported Artemisia in the blessed land of Yunku, it was exactly a chess piece thrown out of the blessed land by the old master. Sui right side hesitated and stopped, but in the end, he still said nothing. Zhu Lian helped to clear the siege, and took the initiative to nod, and said, "What's so difficult about this? Just talk." Lao Guanzhou asked, "Why isn't Jiang Shangzhen of Yuguizang on the mountain?" Zhu Lian smiled and said, "I should have stayed on the mountain and went to Tongyi's Hao together, but our chief Zhou got more angry and ran away to the wild world." Sui caught Zhu Lian's wink on the right, she left silently and went to the millet grain side. Lao Guanzhou looked around and sighed, "I have never thought that in the end, your Confucianists will have the most advantage. Yudo probably will be very angry." Once the patriarchs of the three religions were able to practice Taoism, academies, temples, and Taoist temples at the same time, then the Haoran world, which is the most accommodating to different teaching questions, would of course receive the most gifts. At the same time as the Taoist ancestors, the patriarch of the three religions will take a trip to the ruins of the old heaven. Of course, this big problem will not be left to others. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "The second child is the best." The old master said softly, "Just say one thing, when there are no more 15 realms in the world, and there are already 14 realms, how would you think about the chance to become a monk in the 14th realm?" Cui Dongshan nodded, "It's about to change, there are bad and good, anyway, I am more inclined to the latter now." The old master asked, "Now? Why?" Cui Dongshan said solemnly, "My husband is here." The old Guanzhou turned to look at Zhu Lian, one of Lu Chen's 5 dreams, and possibly even the second. Zhu Lian smiled and said, Senior sees what I do, and I am not as handsome as my son. The old View Master laughed and said, It's really a good place. It's a worthwhile trip, and the style is very positive. Speaking of this, Lao Guanzhu smiled. Sun Guanzhu is always a bad guy. After listening to this admonition, he openly scolded Wu Shuangjiang and said to let your mother's ass, my friend Yu Dou is who? Really invincible. What about an enemy country in one boat? What Yu Dou Yu wants is this kind of feat that seems dangerous, but is actually a false alarm. As for the implication of the old Guanzhu, of course, in addition to Sui Chu Gong and Xian Du Guan, he who has now migrated Guan Tao Guan to the Qingming world is also a person in the same boat as Yu Dou. Cui Dongshan poured a cup of tea for the old Guanzhu. Senior, anyway, you and my husband are considered to have passed each other year after year. It's rare to take a trip to the Luopa mountain. Next time I visit, I really don't know that the year of the ox and the moon are worse than me. Take you around Jiaisfeng. Old Guanzhou laughed and said, Don't make friends with the poor roads indiscriminately. It is considered the best to give Qin Pingon a rubbing of the lotus flower blessed land. Cui Dongshan is still unwilling to give up, it's just a walk in Luopa mountain. Seniors didn't agree to it. It's too unreasonable. Every step this old Taoist takes in the world, the place where he sets foot is very particular, because it is a place to cultivate everywhere. Plowing in spring and harvesting in autumn, wearing shackles for a long time, busy in the field all his life, who are you talking about? The bullish temper of this old master is of course because of his bullish qualifications. What is the field? In the early years, the heaven and the earth were the fields. Above the earth, the soil all has age and attributes. The rain and grass grows, the tillers work hard, the farmers sow hundreds of grains, the mortals' homes camp the fields, the thin ground is dung, and the light soil wraps it with ox feet. Then weak soil becomes stronger. While the art of squashing the green, the method of suppressing the green, seems to be common, but in fact it has a lot of origins, and the method of suppressing the victory. This old predecessor of the Taoist temple of the East China Sea, the path that he took, can finally turn the filthy stale air between the heavens and the earth into a clear air, and this mysterious clear air is more regarded as the fundamental aura of the Tao than the practitioners. And even more difficult to obtain with human resources. If spiritual qi is the foundation of practice, then clear qi is the source of luck. The old peasant ancestor in the hundreds of families, if he was lucky enough to meet this old master, he would only be more exaggerated than Cui Dongshan. Benefit to its people and good years, with fertile grains, it belongs to the good fortune of God and the year of the new year. How can Cui Dongshan miss this once-in-lifetime opportunity, and can't wait to take the veteran to walk through the green waters and green mountains of all the hills of his own? He directly separated out 3 mines, went to the county town and county office respectively, and the Longzhou Kiln Affairs Supervision Bureau, and quickly read it through. The household registration and land deeds even carefully deduced the Longshu River, which was called Wuxi in ancient times, the changes in the river course, and the fields. Human affairs in the world, the foundation is moisturized, the ins and outs, there are traces to follow. Old Guanzhu retracted his mind, frowned slightly, and glanced at the blacksmith shop by the river, Lu Xianyang, a young sword repairman in the Yupu realm. Cui Dongshan suddenly realized, stroking his palms and smiling, understood, it's no wonder that the Grand Master who traveled to the lotus flower blessed place back then praised the fall of the galaxy and the bottom of the lotus flower. Then I understand why you was deliberately thrown here on credit. It turns out that this is the opportunity for her to break the realm in the future, and it is impossible to say that the blue cliff is a moon palace mirror. What a strange stone, the blue cliff gathers the roots of clouds. Suspected is the ancient moon, reunion falls here. Old master, I guessed it, right? Old Guanju said, "You go and make a price for the poor Tao and the sword repairer. It's better to be less involved with this sleepwalking young man. Naturally, he is not afraid of a sword repair, but is worried about being careless. A certain ancient will follow the context to find his self who has not yet attained Tao. Isn't everything going away?" Lao Guan squinted his eyes and smiled. "If you want to help him sit on the floor and raise the price, it's okay." Cui Dongshan drank a big sip of tea, moisturized his throat, and shouted with his heartfelt voice, "Lu Yusue and Lu Yusue, brother, I have something to ask for." At the blacksmith's shop, Lu Xianyang was eating sunflower seeds on the bamboo chair under the eaves. He was busy chatting with Yu Qianyue on the side. He heard the voice of Brother Cui and said, "What is it? If you want to ask for something, please. Then don't speak." "No, I don't have such a brother." Cui Dongshan sniffed and wiped his face with his sleeve. "What is a brother?" "That's it for Brother Lu." Cui Dongshan quickly talked to Lu Xianyang about the general situation. He said that the benefits of this transaction may have to be returned to Luopishan. Because of the lack of a treasure of Jinshan that he dreamed of, he just happened to be taken advantage of. That thing. Cui Dongshan didn't talk about any compensation, what was converted into Guyu money to Lu Xianyang. Lu Xianyang turned his head and spit out the melon seed shell, and said, "Damn it, it's a big deal, it's easy to talk. Remember to let the bully give enough capital." Lu Xianyang caught a glimpse of the round-faced girl from the corner of his eye, and suddenly shouted, "Wait a moment. Wait a moment, I have to discuss with girl Yu first." Cui Dongshan tweeted, "Lu Yu is asleep, what's the matter with you? If you have a daughter-in-law, you will forget your brothers. It's okay. I can recognize you." Lu Xianyang turned her head and Xiaoyu roughly talked about the doorway of the stone cliff, which might be her chance of breaking, but when she heard about the Moon Palace and the treasures, she was the most annoyed of these twists and turns, so she simply pretended not to hear anything. "Besides, what about Lu Xianyang? What do you ask me to do? What is our relationship? There seems to be nothing. Nowadays, there are fewer and fewer ducks in the Longshu River, and there are fewer old duck bamboo shoots in the shop. Her mood is not getting better. So she also bought a litter of fluffy little ducklings. They only kept it day by day. After raising them, they developed feelings." She also warned Lu Xianyang not to make any decisions. Lu Xianyang immediately replied to Cui Dongshan with her heartfelt voice, "Ms. Yu said, it doesn't matter for my face, it doesn't matter what chance is not, she's not rare at all." Cui Dongshan was amazed, "Sister-in-law is really a good match, Brother Lu is so lucky." Thinking of something, Cui Dongshan vowed to promise, "Looking back, you married Miss Yu. If my brother is the third largest member of the money, I will have your last name." Lu Xianyang curiously asked, "Who gave the money to the biggest guy?" "Chen Ping'an." Cui Dongshan laughed and said, "My husband has no money, it must be our chief of the week in Luopishan." Lu Xianyang nodded and said, "Remember to remind Chief Zhou, if things are busy and there are not enough people, you can get the red envelopes, and let him figure out how much money you can get. You have to help me with the specific words, Brother Cui." "Fan, that's what I mean anyway." Cui Dongshan slapped his chest loudly. Old Guanju suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, "Cui Dongshan, you can say something to Lu Xianyang, Xia will be a fairy soldier if he is refined properly." Cui Dongshan relayed this sentence without hesitation. Lu Xianyang jumped on the spot and said, "Xianbing. Brother Cui, please increase the price quickly and let the buyer add money to the death." "It's okay, anyway, it's just that. Don't bother me, otherwise the brothers won't have to do it." Cui Dongshan really stopped speaking and looked back from the Longshu River. A person like Lu Xianyang is actually envious of everyone. The old Guanju took advantage of Cui Dongshan and Lu Xianyang's speech, and made a little calculation to trace the origin. Lu Xianyang's ancestors were proficient in the techniques of disturbing dragons, scorpion dragons, and cutting dragons. In fact, he was given a compound surname Yulong, and the earliest Lu character was originally shaped like axe and warriors, and it was a very majestic one. Text. After the Battle of Zhanlong, it is estimated that it was the ancestor of the Lu family and changed back to the Lu family name. Otherwise, in this Lizhu cave, the descendants of the tribe will have the surname Yulong, which is too dazzling, and will be invisibly suppressed and restrained by a small cave, which will hurt the numerology of future generations. It will naturally be difficult for a family to flourish and multiply. Prosperity. Old Guanju asked, this young man, did he know about his family affairs? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, do you know, it's still Lu Xianyang. So Tianwan led the red line for Lu Xianyang and Naipingxiang Zhigui. Of course she did not do it at will. God to enjoy food, you will be able to settle down and live a life steadily, and the patriarch will have a great skill in appreciating food and eating, and you can eat it wherever you go. But if a person doesn't change his mind and doesn't think about it, in fact, even if God and patriarch are enjoying the meal together, it's no good. It's like a person who has an empty rice bowl but no rice. You don't know the blessing and the blessing because you don't know how to take a step back and think. According to the mountain, this is called a discord between the art and the way. Of course Lu Xianyang's qualifications are very good, but in fact, there are not many fairy seeds with the qualifications of monasticism in the world, and they just quietly spend their lives in the world, and even live and seek a life, and their lives are not as good as many ordinary masters. If Lu Xianyang's heart is slightly divergent, such as laziness, for example, being stingy, maybe in Huaihuang County today, there will be an extra bachelor who goes around all day long and only complains all year round. Cui Dongshan asked with a smile, Senior, give me a price that matches a fairy soldier. Old Guanju stretched out his hand, a piece of purple moor paper was spread out of thin air on the table, and his fingers were drawn together. The most important book of Taoism in the world is to write the scriptures of 3 mountains and draw the runes of the true shape of the 5 mountains. Ancient immortal officials and gods, who must not be taught by immortals and green books. Early monks, looking for famous mountains, looking for great waters, opening mountains and establishing sects, building cities along the water, and admiring this picture, mountain ghosts, strange narcissus, and all evil spirits dare not get close. In the end, Tao Fa was scattered and widely spread in the world. In addition to the great circulated search for mountains, there are also these 5 sacred figures. It is just that the practitioners who draw this kind of Tao diagrams of later generations do not know the true rhyme of Tao Fa, and are unacceptable. Entering the door, the shape is not similar, and the look is naturally more scattered. Cui Dongshan knew that Lao Guanju would know that he knew what he would give. Millet Grains rushed to Jing Daifeng's house immediately, and took tea to the old chieftain. While running, he turned his head and reminded, Old chieftain, you're not chasing guests. Keep drinking tea and eating melon seeds. Wait a while, don't worry. Let me help you get more. Luo Guan stood up, but 2 more white jade scrolls appeared on the table. Zhu Lian smiled at Cui Dongshan. Sure enough, we still have a big frame for the right guardian, and it has the most face. The old Guanju waved his sleeve and put the rock cliff into his sleeve. The green cliff on the riverside is still there, and the shape is divine. Cui Dongshan put away the picture scroll and the white jade axis, and then stood up with Zhu Lian. This point of hospitality is still necessary. Unexpectedly, the old Guanju took his seat again, and sneered, Why, did you want to leave? Luopishan wants to drive guests. Cui Dongshan sat down, and Zhu Lian asked with a smile, Why don't you go up the mountain to eat a meal before leaving? As a result, the old View Master turned a deaf ear, stood up again, and said, "Whether it is waking up from a dream or falling into a dream, you will be treated as if you owe a meal in the Qingming world. If you die in this mountain for so long, then you will be the poor." I didn't say anything. Zhu Lian smiled and nodded. Old Guanzhu finally took a pot of tea from the little girl in black and thanked him. The millet grain scratched his head. "The old man is too polite." The master of Laoguan raised his eyes and overlooked. The mountains and rivers stretched, the water was low and the mountains were high. "Why mountaineering and what is monasticism?" murmured. The mountains echoed. Qingtu, Wei Jin and Chao Jun were inexplicably, just like the hosts of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Those who come and go must come and say hello to them. Insert an app, a perfect re-engraving of the old version of the book-chasing artifact, an app that can change the source. Chao Jun is very happy. In recent years, it can be said that the time has come to work, staying around to practice swordsmanship, and met a lot of big people one after another. First, he met an unknown Taoist who seemed to be Chen Ping's uncle, and then he returned to his hometown. Ning Yao, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji, and the third master of Bai Yujing, Lu Qin even invited himself to the Qingming world in person, and why not enter the summer palace? Our uncle Chao Jun can follow as long as he nods his head. Master Lu is a guest at Bai Yujing. Chen Sancho and Dai Zhang fell directly beside Xiao Yunyan. The former sword fairy of Chun Banzai also has Mrs. Yan Yan, and the digital sword of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Xiao Yunyan explained the situation to the two local swordsmen. For Chen Sancho, Xiao Yunyan is very optimistic. Chen Sancho wondered, "Xiao Jianxian, is Chen Pin gone broken again?" Xiao Yunyan shook his head. "It's still Yupu realm, but I don't know what's going on." Master Wang looked respectful, took the lead in holding his fist and asked Wei Jin, "Dare to ask Wei Jianxian, where does this vision come from?" Master Wang is the only one who has practiced in the Great Wall of Sword Qi among the 5 swordsmen of Tonggizong. This Jian Xiu born in Tongyes Yexiu was in the Golden Core realm at that time, and then left the Jianqi Great Wall with the left and right to rush to Tonggizong. In the Great Wall of Jianqi, Master Wang didn't have the nerve to say his hometown. Whether it was his situation or his temperament, it was a bit similar to the old Jian Ziyu who has now become the worship of Luopa Mountain. Bao Pingzhou, because there were young hidden officials and Fengshua Temple in the Wei and Jin dynasties, instead of being looked down upon by the Great Wall of Jianqi, he took a high look. At any rate, there were 2 sword immortals who went to death generously in Ai Aizhou, and later there was a female sword immortal Xie Songhua who made military exploits. Only Tong Yezhou, on the side of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, is simply worthy of the name. Wei Jin explained, Chen Pingan, Ning Yao, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji, and Bai Yujing taught Lu Xin. The 5 went to the wilderness to help Aliang who was in the hinterland battlefield. Master Wang was stunned. Ning Yao and Qi Tingji are sword repairmen in the Ascension realm. Lu Ji is one of the top 10 peak sword immortals in the city. Although he is still in the fairyland for the time being, his combat power is completely comparable to that of the Ascending Realm sword repair. The key is why there is more Lu Xin. Furthermore, Aliang and the left and right, how can they run to the hinterland of the wild world to shoot their swords together? And such a lineup led by the hidden official, all the way south, who dares to show up and who can stop it in the wild world? 5 sword repairmen, a 14th realm monk, who did not kill. Master Wang was slurried, but he didn't dare to ask Wei Jin anymore. Yuaxian hesitated for a moment, and asked in his heart, Wei Jianxian, how is Mr. Zhua? Caring is messy. Wei Jin said, if the overall situation of the battlefield has been decided, Chen Pingan will not go this trip. Yuaxian breathed a sigh of relief. Li Wanyong glanced at this famous Snow Wind Temple Great Sword Immortal, obviously a little surprised. A great sword immortal with outstanding combat power, why didn't he walk with them? It is a joke to say that the Wei and Jin dynasty are greedy for life and fear of death. I used to ask the heavenly monarch of Jianbei Zhu Luzhou twice to thank you in the Yupu realm and the fairy realm, so this is strange. Wei and Jin were amiable on Wang Shizi's side, because Wang Shizi, as a wild cultivator, was willing to come to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Wang Shizi practiced his sword beside Mr. Zhua. As for this person who didn't recognize him, he kept looking at himself with his eyes, so Wei Jin reminded him, external sword repairers, keep your eyes in check. There are only two types of sword repairs in the world. Those who have made swords in the Great Wall of Sword Qi and those who have never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Chao Jun smiled and said, there are two groups of genealogical monks from the Middle-earth divine continent in front of us. Our mountain owner, the hermit, has lost the slightest temper. Lessons learned, you outsiders, you must let me take it as a warning. Besides, our mountain lord is more grudges. How did Qingyang Mountain end? Have you heard of it? Especially Li Jianxian, I heard that there is a little conflict with the hermit's senior brother Zhua. Li Wanyong glanced at Chao Jun. Chao Jun glanced at Li Wanyong. Can actually be regarded as a pair of difficult brothers who have the same disease, but the two of them are even more displeased with each other. On the other side of the sun pendant, the station people include Su Zi, Lu Qi, and Dali Song Changjing, Yugue sect master Wei Ying. The Tonggizong has been unsettled in recent years and has risen again. After the war ended, the reason why he was able to falter and never fall was due to two forces. One was the Dali dynasty in Aquarius Island in the north, and the other was Ben. The Yuguazong of Zhouzhou, the new Lord Wei Ying, did not fall into the pit, and took advantage of the situation to infiltrate, split, and erode Tonggizong. Instead, during the proceedings of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, he said a few words of great weight for Tonggizong. Can get this love. So the 5 sword repairmen of Tonggizong, the final destination of this trip is not the Great Wall of Sword Qi, but to go to Guishu's Sun Pendant to visit Song Changjing and Wei Ying. Moreover, Qin Shuihu and Du Yan are fans of Su Zi and Lu Qi respectively, the kind who can be happy for many years by being able to meet and say a few words. Currently, the position of Sect Master Tongye and the Patriarch Master of Rules are temporarily suspended. After these few young sword repairers discussed, they made a decision: whoever is the first or second one to enter the Yupu realm, whoever will be the lord and the ruler, will hold the front. Wait until Tonggizong gradually recovered his vitality, and then replace it again. In fact, the Tonggizhou Patriarch Hall today is just a few of their young people. Next, Yu Axian went to chat with Mrs. Yan Yan. She seemed to have a relationship with Wu Manyan. Master Wang stayed with Wei Jin, and with this Fengshue Temple Great Sword Immortal, he humbly asked some questions about swordsmanship. Qin Sleeping Tiger's sword went to the old master he show, please ask. Du Yan found Xiao Yunyan, because the family had a bit of dispensable incense with the Diaoshuan Mountain Chunfan's high earlier, and they were all business dealings. It is said that Xiao Jianxian is not only the genealogical monk of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect, but also from the earliest Dragon Elephant Sword sect Gesht, was promoted to the person in charge of money. Within 100 years, Xiao Yunyan will be in charge of all affairs of the Zhongmen treasury, and then help the Zhongmen to deal with people and things. He agreed with Qi Tingji for 100 years. Xiao Yunyan will only be a transitional person in charge of money. When the Dragon Elephant Sword sect finds a suitable candidate, Xiao Yunyan will resignation. Tong Yezhou is actually 2 neighbors, Aquarius Island and Nanpa Suo Island. Wei Jin glanced at the woman, Jianxiu named Yu Axian, and she gave birth to an exquisite heart. There is still hope for Tonggizong to rise again. Just have to boil. Wei Jin's horizontal sword is on his knees, looking towards the south. I don't know if Lianghe and Chen Pingan can all return safely. At the gate of Luopa Mountain. Just as the old Guanju was about to leave, Cui Dongshan suddenly asked in his heart, "Can you figure it out?" Old Guanju nodded. It's not difficult to calculate the process, but the result is unpredictable. Cui Dongshan looked solemn and asked, "How about it?" Old Guanzhou smiled and said, "For example, 2 people have been promoted to 14 levels, such as someone's sword opening to the Moon Mountain." You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.